for buds where I can just grab food off your plate yet.
Oh
But
yeah,
Never
you
touch
yeah
a
you
man's
can't.
fries.
I don't think we're
Anybody
that.
know the movie?
We're still evolving. I don't
Yeah,
think
of
we're there
course.
yet.
What's the movie, Jack?
That would be Men at Work.
Nice.
Nice.
Touch a man's fucking fries. And who's the actor?
That would be Keith David, I think.
God damn, you're good.
Yeah, I like
is
that
a
movie.
Great movie.
It is a great movie.
Fucking great movie that never got the credit it deserved. Hello, welcome back to the Friends of Zeus podcast. This is episode 119. You can find us on all the platforms. Tonight is Tom's show. We are going to be talking about, how do I put this? I guess the impact of legalizing marijuana in for the focus, we watched a movie. We all watched a documentary, or a brief documentary on small community that they're, now that it's legal, it's kind of made it hard for them to get rid of what would have been huge, monumental grow sites for marijuana, and now it's legal and it's hard. I guess it's harder to make them stop, and it's gotten out of hand. Hey, Tom, why don't you go ahead, because it's a really good story, actually.
Right. Well, they weren't those grow sites weren't there before. I mean, they popped up after it became legal, but we'll talk about that. So, Anyway, thank you, Zeus. Good evening, Mike and Jack.
Good evening.
I think this is going to be a good.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right. This is going to be a good conversation, I think. I was thinking, I got this idea. I was thinking about things that you think you know the whole story, and then one day you learn the full truth, and it just kind of blows you away, because there's a lot of things that we think you know, but sometimes it's worse than we thought. And this story that we're going to talk about tonight, it's one of those things. We're going to be talking about cartels. And everybody knows about cartels. Yeah, they're down there near the border somewhere. There's drugs, Breaking Bad stuff's going on. We've seen them in the movies. And everybody know, okay, yeah, people are growing weed illegally. It was happening in the national forest. A lot of times they'd, have these illegal weed grows, and the government would go in and bust them up. Yeah, we all knew that, big deal. But it's worse than you thought. And you don't really know what's going on out there, I think. And I didn't know it until I heard this story. But so we're going to be talking about cartels, weed, the problems with the border, human trafficking, murder, bad government policy, and how that can screw things up more than you can ever imagine. Evil people from Minnesota. The water shortage in California.
That's what I say. Fuck Minnesota. Remove them from the map.
They're bad. They're getting worse and worse every day. The water shortage problem out in California, bad environmental policies, you name it, all these things. So I first heard about this. I saw an interview with this guy online. His name was Jorge Ventura. He's a reporter for the Daily Caller. And he did a documentary called Narcofornia. And he's also done one called Cartelville. He basically started out doing kind of like reporter stuff for the Daily Caller down at the border with, doing stories of, the mass, immigrant crossings and how that was a problem down there. And then then he started kind of doing stories about the drugs and cartels in Southern California, where it's a problem down there. So, we all know, okay, so the cartels and drug dealers, marijuana growers, how they were like growing marijuana in the national forest. Usually they'd find some land out in the middle of nowhere and they'd be growing weed out there, but the government could come in and bust those up because it's on national forest land. So they didn't need, any reason to go in there and break it up. They could just do it because they were already breaking the law just by being on the national forest. So then something happened. This is where the worm turned. So 2016 in California, they passed Prop 64. So this was Governor Newsom's thing, where they passed a bill that not only made marijuana legal, but it really reduced the penalty for illegal growing. So everywhere else, it's like a felony still, even in places where, you know, marijuana is legal, it's still a felony if you get caught growing too much or whatever. But in California, they made it a misdemeanor. So it's only a $500 fine if you get caught growing too much marijuana. So this is where the cartels kind of like looked at this and like, that's not bad.
Well, wait, elaborate on that a little. What I
mean?
gathered from it was if you have like 7 pounds, it's $500. But if you have 7,000 pounds, it's still $500.
Right. Yeah. It's a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
So you can be growing, you know, and illegally growing and selling millions and millions of dollars worth of marijuana, and you get a ticket for $500.
This is what they're doing.
I mean, sounds like a good deal for if you want to break the law.
Yeah.
So what they realize, okay, so there's not much of a penalty out there. It's California. They're kind of tolerant of crime anyway to begin with. So they don't have to grow on the national forest anymore. And they realize if they can find like a small rural towns and rural places out in California where the land is so cheap, it's like $500 an acre. And the cartel's got plenty of money to start with. So they can buy up a bunch of little parcels and acres of land in these small rural communities. And it's a good target for them. They're really gaming the system is what they're doing. Not only do they get the cheap land, there's no punishment for growing illegal weed, but these small towns, they don't have the resources, they don't have the police, because first they started in like LA County, growing illegal weed down there with the cartels, but LA County has a lot of money and a lot of the Los Angeles police. But if you go up to the Northern California, Siskiyou County, Laskin County, Mendocino County, they don't have any money up there. It's just like rural, you know, real spread out small towns with like 2,000 people. And then all of a sudden you have like a rush of all these people coming in out of nowhere, you know, setting up illegal grows. So there are people who are telling stories about how, you know, they'd look out, they'd like one day they'd be in a nice, peaceful like valley. They'd wake up one morning, they look across the dirt road at the land across from them, and somebody put up, you know, some kind of like greenhouse thing. And they said it looked like something out of the X-Files movie.
Right.
So they're like, what is going on? Okay, whatever.
Hey, Tom, not to interrupt, but I mean, the one that I watched, the little valley town, the desert valley where this was happening, I think it technically was in LA County. It was just, it was further north.
There were bits,
in
LA County is a huge county.
Yeah.
And so parts of it are like way, way out and very rural and like desert type area, but it is still
like,
technically in LA County.
Right. And they're not getting help either. But go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Right. But they might get even more help than these other places, well, that don't have the money or the resources. But anyway, that's how it would start. They'd see one, then another, and then another. And it would just kind of grow and grow. And then they found out. So not only it's the cartels are moving in, Chinese are moving in specifically to do this.
The Hmong.
Russian mob is there. There's California
Armenians.
prison gangs are out there. They're on this too. And then there's this one the weirdest part was when Jorge Ventura was telling the story about the Hmong community. It's Hmong, Hmong, and they're like from Minnesota. They're like southern, it's a Southeast Asian community that came all the way over from Minnesota and started buying up land in these Northern California counties specifically for this purpose, to grow illegal marijuana there. So all these, illegal groups are coming in, making tons of money. And that's not the end of it. So also, to grow this much marijuana, they need a lot of water.
Yep.
I forget how much. It's like gallons and gallons of water per plant per day. So they start redirecting the streams. They start going down into the aquifers. They're digging wells and pulling out all the water. All the ponds are going empty in the area. All the other people, the farmers and the horses, they've got nothing there. Plus, they're buying a lot of water. They'll go to like the water, I forget what
Store,
the water
water
plant,
store.
the water store.
Yeah.
No, they'll
Yeah,
go
do you have any
to
water?
the water board will like sell water. So they'll buy like truckfuls of water, and they're bringing that in. They'll get water wherever they can. I mean, they have enough money. You've got these water trucks that are just coming in like every day, like every 30 minutes. There's another big truck with a big, plastic tank on the back, bringing in water. And you've seen the pictures of like Lake Mead, I think it was. That's where the water's going down. There's so little water out there on the West Coast, and these guys are just stealing
Taking
it
it.
blind, basically.
Right.
So they're really exacerbating the problem.
And that's also affecting the utility bills for the people that are there, right? I thought I saw that in one of the documentaries.
Yeah, because they're not they are buying land and using their own land, but they're also kind of squatting on their neighbors' lands and other
Mhm.
people's lands in the area,
Yep.
and they're leaving trash, and it's a huge environmental problem because they're using all these chemicals and what do you call it, the bug pesticides, things like that, and just overdoing it and with no thought to regulation or safety or anything. Then you got the problem with the border. So we know the border is a problem. We just did an episode on that recently. And so the cartels who are at the border, they smuggle people up to the border and get them across. But in return for that, they kind of like pull you into this world of illegal marijuana growing where you're kind of like an indentured servant. You got to come and work at the marijuana plant, growing marijuana in these places until you pay off whatever your debt is. Or I think some of them don't get paid at all. People are just basically being kidnapped. People turning up dead. If you run away from the farm, they'll cut your hand off and bring you back. So a lot of people are up there with like one hand. It's ridiculous. It's like a
That's
third world
hurting
country up there.
productivity.
I was gonna say that's hurting productivity.
Well, hey,
Oh.
it's either one hand or you're dead. And
Yeah.
I mean, they'll just get somebody else. I don't think they really care about the people. For them, it's all about the money.
And that the insane part about it is the greed, because they could totally go legit and still be making a gazillion dollars. So this human trafficking it just shows what you're dealing with when you get to this level of drug dealing. I'm all for the legalization, and I know my politics have changed because what I'm about to say is I'm actually normally not, or more recently normally not, for federalization of anything like big government, but I feel like this is one of the things where we need it to be legalized across the board so that they can start regulating across the board. I think it's the only way to control it. Where we've walked too far into the desert to turn back. So
Yeah, but one of the things that the documentary I watched, I think it was called How the Cartels Are Taking Over Small Towns, or it was a question mark, like, are they taking over? I forget. But it was the same guy. It was the same guy Tom referenced. And one of the issues with California is not just the statute, but the fact that there are still task forces that can break these things up. But because of the government there, they've completely defunded the police to the point where even in LA County, which has more money, they don't have the resources even to tear these crops down, which by the way, they put them right back up the next day. And my fear is that if let's say the federal government one day, the Supreme Court, whatever, they say, well, liquor's legal, so this is legal now.
Mhm.
But there are certain little things that you can't do. The federal government that I'm watching, the DOJ that I'm watching on every other episode that we do, is going to basically act like the district attorney of LA and the
Right.
governor of California. Like it's going to turn into a shit show for residents where these things are being propped up. And it's going to, whether it gets corporatized or not. I mean, this cartel is like a major corporation that the legal growers can't compete with anyway.
Right.
So I just think, mo money, mo problems. You know what I mean? Like
Well,
the old rap song says. And I don't know. When I see what's happening in California, I don't know that I want that nationwide. I mean, I think the lessons are here,
For
right?
sure.
That's
my,
what.
my argument to that is that it's the same as busting moonshine, you know, what do you still like where they're just pumping out the moonshine all day long. There's dangers involved with not having it regulated. Like that's where you get into the 40% THC and zero CBD, which
No, I get that. I get
so
that.
I put it in that bathtub gin kind of category of before prohibition was ended, people were making stuff in their bathtubs. Like literally, that's why it's called bathtub gin. But it was
Right.
blinding people. It was killing them. It was because it was more powerful. It was causing the addiction probably to come on quicker. So I understand what you're saying. Again, I go back to we've traveled too far into the desert to turn back for water now. We kind of got to lean into it, and I understand what you're saying. I just don't think
No,
that I think the options have been robbed from us.
I don't think it's about the product. It's not about marijuana being legal.
right.
It's about illegal growing and what the punishment. If you make illegal growing a misdemeanor across the country, Zeus, it's only going to spread across the country. The legal grows they're on the brink of collapse. They cannot compete with this because the illegal grows, they pay zero taxes. They don't have to follow any rules.
Yep.
They can do whatever they want.
And that's
Yeah.
why I say that should be federalized, because then corporations, of course, will get in, and you'll have your cosmetic, your bougie weeds and all that, getting
all they
high
gotta
brand
do-
or whatever. But it'll
but
make it less.
it's not about the
appealing.
marijuana and how they make marijuana. It's only about illegal grows cannot be a misdemeanor. That has to be a felony. Otherwise, illegal is going to go across the country.
I think the only way you do that is by, like I said, you got to make it. It's paint.
But I think what Jack is telling you, we're afraid that the federal law will be misdemeanor or illegal
as
growing
well.
marijuana.
Mhm.
That's the worst case scenario. And that's what Gavin Newsom wants to run for president. This was his idea.
Oh Christ!
If he brings this to the nationwide, we're all screwed.
Right. And everybody's sympathetic to the reasons why. Like they talk about it in the documentary. Gavin Newsom said all the war on drugs does is criminalize marginalized members of the community. In other words, hey, who's smoking all the weed? Oh, okay, it's this group here, and they're already getting screwed. They're already marginalized, and now we're going to have the war on drugs that we had in the 90s that basically locked up a bunch of, Black and Hispanic people. That's why he's doing it. Meanwhile, though, everybody, like you said, is smoking weed now, so it isn't really about just one group. I mean, it's
No, fair
become
enough.
recreational.
I feel like
I just think that pitch could work on a national level, like we've
Yeah.
seen every other pitch in the favor of marginalized groups basically passed into law. I mean, like that's like a catch-all. You can't even argue against it.
I feel like for me, from my standpoint, is more about, I guess it depends on what they're making. If they're making these hybrids and all these crazy weeds that I see patients coming in with broken brains on all the time, I'd rather have it federalized. I know I'm not normally about like broad strokes with all this stuff.
No, I think Tom's just saying that. I think we all understand what you're saying. We don't want dangerous product out there,
Right.
period. But
And they
I
don't
think
care. Clearly, they don't give a shit about anything. They don't
they
give a
don't
shit
no.
about the environment, their neighbors, nothing.
Well, right.
Get that.
They're slave laborers. They
Yeah.
don't care about anything. And I don't mean laborers. They're not doing the work. I mean like they're enslavers.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
yeah, and if when we were looking at the video, the one thing I noticed is there wasn't even like a nice posh house on these grow sites. Like
No.
there wasn't.
Mm-mm.
It was just the
It's
greenhouses
business.
and like an RV, like an RV for people to live in. And they showed on one of them, I forget which one it was, but they showed the inside of the RV, and there's like fly strips there.
Yeah.
Like I mean,
Right.
the greed that is involved in this is monumental. Like that's the part, honestly, that I found more offensive than anything. Is like you can't even work with the local groups a little.
Grower.
But the
You know?
thing is, the thing is how they're making this money is the government is already regulating the industry legalized. They're regulating it so much to like what the cost can be, how many people you have to have in a shop. I mean, they're dictating all this stuff, and then they're saying, or you can just ignore all that, and we're only going to fine you $500. That's the problem. It's the disparate way they're dealing with it. If I don't think they have to quote unquote regulate it more. I mean, they're regulating it now, and it's a disaster. I mean,
Right.
I would say less regulation to bring in more competition and not have the legal growers be shackled with all these regulations. But at the
I'm going with the regulations that are legal grower friendly.
or they have to put teeth in it. They have to put
Right.
teeth in it because
Yeah.
again, they've created the state of California created this market by saying, but okay, this is legal now. They knew there was a demand for it, but you have to jump through all these hoops to do it legally. And like I said, or you can just ignore everything we just said, go off like a wild person and have slave labor on your land, and we'll charge you $500. I mean, that they
Or
created
pay
it. So,
12,000. The guy, one of the guys said he had a marijuana shop and he was paying $12,000. What do you say, a month in taxes?
in taxes, yeah, per month to his local town.
That's
I
just
mean,
one guy.
That's just one guy.
And
But-
the illegal grow, it's a $49 billion industry right now. There's 500 illegal grows in LA County, 1,100 in San Bernardino County, over 7,000 in Siskiyou County up in Northern California. So it's really, exploding up in Northern California, where it's more rural, it's out of the way. They
Well, it's
don't
kind of
have
like
the police.
it's kind of like the meth lab, all the meth labs in like Arizona. The reason why they're doing it there is because for 10 miles this way and 10 miles that way, you can see people coming.
Right.
So you could blow up the meth lab right then and there, no evidence. I think my thinking is that's what they're doing here. It's just a different flavor of the same thing. Is we can see them coming from miles away. We can.
They're using technology to their
Mhm.
advantage. So they'll
Yeah.
have people out posted like down at the end of the road. So if a car comes down the road, they get on the phone, they call each other, everybody scatters. They're using drones. there's like a reporter went in, and when the police go in, or the drone will come right down on top of your car and look at your license plate number. So they're using technology against
Crazy.
you. One of the
Yeah. No,
go ahead,
I'm
Jack.
sorry. No, California, I mean, we've done so many episodes. I don't know that we've ever done one on California, and I don't know that, maybe I don't know if it's even worth it to do because it's so obvious. But the reason why the state, almost as an entirety, I mean, almost as a whole, is becoming a ghost town and a complete shithole is because they have made they have made these kind of like arguments for decriminalization that where they play at the heartstrings and they even tease you with the potential purse strings. And look at what they did. In most of the major places they decriminalized like robbery and shoplifting. I mean, and now you have businesses basically hitting the road. I mean, so tell me that doesn't affect regular mom and pop living in these towns. I mean, this is just a microcosm of a much bigger problem. I mean, it isn't just weed, but I know that's what we're talking about tonight. But this kind of government, this kind of administration is just, people don't talk when they make these proposals. Everybody's like, "Oh yeah, everybody wants to smoke weed. I get it. Yeah, that's so great." And look what's happening to these communities. It's like, look what's happening in San Francisco. I mean, that's a whole nother show.
Why they don't? I mean, the key mistake they made was the misdemeanor.
The
For
misdemeanor.
illegal. If they would just switch that back, I don't know why they won't do it. I mean, it's politics. I understand. And he just doesn't want to admit that he made a mistake. I mean, you don't have to make marijuana illegal again. All you got to do is change that one part of the law.
Yeah, well, they could do that with robbery and etc. too, but they're not doing it. They could do that with the homelessness problem. They're not doing it. Like, it's almost like, I don't know that they don't care. We talk about this on a national level.
Here's what it is. I was listening to somebody talking about this, and so you got this guy, for instance, we'll call it the homelessness in San Francisco.
Well, I didn't want to take us too off topic. I don't know.
No, this isn't really, this kind of applies.
Okay.
You got a guy that's supposed to be in charge of the homelessness problem. We'll call it San Francisco for.
There you go.
And he's making $300,000 a year to do this job. Now, does it behoove him to solve the problem, or does he lose his livelihood if he actually does something about the problem? And I think that applies to like Newsom. I'm not going to make any accusations that he's getting his palms greased, but it's not completely out of the realistic range either. But that's what I'm getting at.
Greased.
But
I think he had like when he first came in, he had like a 10-year plan to cure homelessness. And it's like 15 years later, 20 years later,
it's worse. Yeah.
It's much worse than it was.
But I think the same thing applies here. Well, we want to solve the drug problem, but if we solve the drug problem, we're out of a job. That's again why I feel like you gotta just.
But it's so simple. Just make it a felony again.
Make it even more serious than
it's
a felony.
The easiest.
If you're growing this stuff, the way they are,
illegal.
I mean, like, why not go back to, okay, fund the police, have your task forces, make it at least a felony. Maybe get the feds involved if it's because if they're breaking federal law, which they probably are, if they're taking slaves from the border,
if you're
and growing this,
kidnapped people.
It just seems like the powers that be don't really care.
Well, also, like, remember a few years ago, and I don't know if they still do this, but when they were having one of their droughts in California, and they were fining people like substantial sums for watering their lawn.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? I'd like to know what that amount was. I think it was more than $500, which it's pretty ironic.
Well, so here is an interesting look at this as well, is the Hmongs. As far as I can tell, they're an indigenous people to like Laos and China, Vietnam, Cambodia. I want to say Cambodia was one of them, but you got this displaced people. I think they probably fall under the qualification of Aboriginals. Don't hold me to that. But they're indigenous people, and generally indigenous people.
Well, everyone is okay.
Well, no, but here's my thing.
I mean, everyone's indigenous to somewhere.
Right. Okay, but that's besides the point. What I'm saying is they already
Don't confuse them, Mike. Just let them go.
No. I have a.
It's like a dog humping your leg. Just let them finish.
Well, no. They don't give a shit about anything because they've been pushed down so much, and now they've got this opportunity to make a lot of money. They can do it. I mean, I'm not defending them, but what I'm saying is they got nothing but gain from
Right.
this.
Well, and that goes to the episode we did last week. I mean, that's the problem with open borders. These people are coming here because the places they come from are awful. And again, once again, the humanitarian argument, hey, we're America. We're the land of opportunity.
That's a step up for them.
Right. Not only that, by saying like we're the land of opportunity, but it's supposed to be legal, just like your being here in the first place is supposed to be legal.
Shaw.
Yeah.
I mean, for God's sake, close it. That's my rant. That's it. Close it.
It's bad when like we look back to the good old days when somebody came over to the country and just complained about the country the whole time. Now they're coming over to the country and fucking decimating shit. And fuck it. You know what I mean?
You're saying everything's good for them, but they're the criminals. I mean, everything's good for the Corleone family too. But they're the criminals. You can't say, well, everything's good for them, so everything's good. I mean, you're taking this. That's the problem. You're looking at them as an immigrant, as a minority.
I'm not defending
saying,
them.
Okay, let them get away with it because they deserve a little bit.
No, what I'm not defending them. What I'm saying is the people that we are supposedly going up to combat, they don't give a fuck, man. Everything is gain for them. They lose a few people that they brought over here to pay a debt by working for fucking nothing and being, abused. They don't give a shit because they got everything is better than what it was before.
But all they care about is the money.
Yeah.
And that's what makes them pieces of shit.
I'll tell you. So let me get back to what Mike was saying about the water and the law. One of the things they're doing, so they tried to attack it from the water angle, and they wanted to cut off the water. Say, okay, no more trucks. You can't have water delivered in here. We're going to shut that down. But the Hmong community, and this is where it's kind of different. They're really getting organized. They're moving in. They're registering to vote. They're getting involved in politics. So they took the sheriff to court. And they were claiming that they were victims of racism because they were, Southeastern Asian. And so the court agreed with them and said, okay, no, you can't make them stop shipping in all this water because you're doing it only because you're racist. So they're really gaming the system.
Yeah, and the old saying goes, no good deed shall go unpunished. I mean, we're paying for the social experiment, ladies and gentlemen, and we're gonna keep paying.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something else that makes them real shitty people. So one of the other things they do, they're criminals. Zeus.
I thought you meant the politicians.
No, it's his delivery what makes them really shitty people.
Who is the shitty people? Who are the
illegal growers?
Oh, okay.
The illegal weed growers. So they on their way from Minnesota over to California. So they drive out seasonally. They'll snatch up some dogs just from people's yards and bring the dogs with them because they use these dogs as lookouts at their illegal grows. Then at the end of the season, they all leave and they just leave the dogs there to starve
Wow.
and die.
Now
so-
I'm mad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the police would come in, they'd find the dog, they'd look at the dog tags, and they'd call the phone number, and it'd be somebody in Minnesota.
Oh,
Say, hey, we
jeez.
found your dog out here in California. They'd be like,
Fucking
what?
Minnesota, man. I don't even know what you call them, Minnesotans.
I think that's right.
Minnesota.
Minnesotans. I
So-
mean, look, this all goes back. I mean, again, you have people who are in power who are making decisions who have no freaking idea what they're doing, and they don't
What would you
know.
call those people that are in power, Mike? I'm
What?
just kidding.
No, I'm just saying politicians, people,
The party.
are betters. The
Ah,
party.
there we go.
But I mean, it's not just the party. I mean, this is as old as time immemorial with politicians. I mean, they, again, people get some semblance of power, and all of a sudden, everyone thinks that they're an expert on everything, and it's just not true. I mean, the whole way it's set up is, going against basic economics. Again, incentivizing people to not follow the rules. That's basically what they've set up with this system. So it's very, poorly designed. They probably know nothing about the agriculture system around how weed works and all that. The people who made these rules had no idea what they're doing. And again, they're not going to change overnight. It's fitting whatever their priorities are. I'm sure that's being met somehow.
Yep.
Gotta believe there's some money making its way back to these people who are in charge somehow. I just can't believe it.
Yeah,
wouldn't be.
see, I don't know, Mike. I think that's part of it, but I think you're being too generous when you say they don't know what they're doing. Like,
Oh, they may know what they're doing.
We've talked
They
about this on
absolutely know what they're
we've talked about this on other shows. It almost seems like they're trying to make things worse.
Mhm.
And we haven't gotten to the bottom of the big picture. But if somebody's doing something that's clearly a bad idea and isn't working, it's either because, like you said, they're ignorant, they're idiots, they don't know what's going to happen, they don't take into account all the factors, or they're doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
And I don't know what their end game is. Like, I know that the DA was a Soros-backed guy, Gascon.
Yeah.
I don't know about the campaign financing of Gavin Newsom's gubernatorial run. I can only guess it's the usual suspects that backed him up. But this stuff just seems like I work in New York City. It's a Democratic run city and a Democratic run state. And in many ways, it's awful.
Mm-hmm.
And they've enacted some of the criminal statutes and the lack of enforcement that we're talking about in California. I mean, it's just unsafe. The numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
And you wonder what's in it for these, like, how do they keep winning elections, and how does this continue, and what is the end game? Like,
Honestly, I think they're the ones that are gaming the system. Create a problem. Again, this is back to my conspiracy versus choreography kind of thing. You create the problem that you can solve whenever the perfect storm of things happen, and then you come out looking like a hero.
But Zeus, that would make sense. That makes total sense if they're trying to solve the problem for the constituents in the vote. They don't care.
Here's the thing. They're not trying to solve the problem now. They're trying to solve the problem when it benefits them the most.
Yeah,
And,
I
and
don't
clearly
know.
right now, let's make more problems. We're in the
none of their constituents live in these rural counties up in Northern
So
California.
why do they care?
Right.
Right.
Why do they care? It's a really horrific situation. My heart goes out to the people there because, again, they said that these are poor communities that were probably maybe not thriving, but were able to, make ends meet, do some nice things for their families. And then you have these people who, again, and I think this is the big part of it, this group of indigenous people from wherever they came from, China, Laos, wherever, that come in.
I don't know why
And-
you keep calling them indigenous people.
Because literally, if you look
They're
up,
from Minnesota.
no, if you look up Hmong, but they're okay. Is that where they came from,
Yes.
or
Where did
they
you
come
come from?
China and go to Minnesota?
Well, yeah, but we're in America, so they're not indigenous, right? I mean, am I understanding the
No, but their heritages,
right? Well,
their values are.
Just say Asian American. That's all you got to say. You
Oh,
don't.
but I think
you
that's
don't need to hear it.
a very broad stroke paint. I think that they are as our Native Americans were, or as the Aboriginals in Australia were. They were indigenous people in China. Like they were for as far as I can understand, like
So
the
what?
first Chinese people.
Zeus,
You
we
mean
were
indigent?
indigenous to Europe. Why does that matter?
I think you mean indigent.
No,
Indigent. They're
Yeah,
also
that's-
indigent.
Really poor.
no, I mean
Indifferent? They're indifferent.
they are that.
They're insolent too. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Again, it's like with when we were talking about the border, what have you, and everyone is always like ready to jump on anything anyone says. But you know, whenever you, not just the United States, but anytime you bring a large amount of people into a country, you have to give time for assimilation. This was common knowledge up until like 10 minutes ago, throughout throughout not just U.S. history but world history. But now we're in a situation where not only are we not assimilating people because there's way too many of them, but when you look at our entertainment and our media and the party, it's like, and someone else said that, I can't remember who I heard said this, but it's like, what are they assimilating into exactly? Like, hey, come to America where it's all white supremacy and racism and, and we hate the founding fathers and all this. So, I mean, we're not assimilating them, and we're not even trying. And so if I'm a Hmong and I'm living in Minnesota and I can make buku bucks and move out to California, it's like, California, I don't care about California or the people that live there. It's like,
Right.
I have no connection to that,
Right. And there's no law enforcement.
And there's no law enforcement.
Now let's
so it's
go.
Like, I mean, as a country, I mean, the United States has gone in our past, and done some really horrible things to other countries throughout the world, and people here are like, I don't care about Cambodia. Let's send over 100 B-52s and carpet bomb the place. My point is, it goes both ways. Human beings, if you don't have an attachment to a place, it's very easy to like just go through the resources and whatever, if you don't have any sort of higher ethical standards. I'm really shocked about the whole water issue. I thought that would be something that would really shake the tree on this, from a population standpoint, to get upset about, because water is life. I mean, and out there, it's really life. I mean, there's people that have major fights about water rights and things along those lines. I'm just surprised that didn't get traction.
I feel like they were going for the water environmental stuff, much like, Capone got arrested for tax evasion. It's like, that's what they went for, and they failed miserably. And it hopefully, if there's any integrity, which I doubt it with California politics, if there's any integrity, they'll find another in to get rid of these people. I don't anticipate that. I think they're just fucking hunky-dory with the way things are. I'm sure, especially if the Hmong are also getting into politics, that means a whole nother group that they can rely on if they play ball with them. I don't see it getting better in California until, again, I'm going to go back to it, until it's legal everywhere and corporations can get involved. And I'm not saying that they're, ethical at all. But what I'm saying is competition at this point seems like it's going to be the only way to defeat this problem.
I don't know who can compete with this.
Yeah, I don't know. What about just plain old law enforcement? Like,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
No, the task forces, like in the documentary I watched, they showed an actual bust based on a search warrant in California. I mean, they executed a search warrant. Remember, Tom, you watched it. They found
Right.
and they found the leftovers, and they confiscated a lot of the weed. And so my question is, I get why there's not enough law enforcement in California because they're defunded. Like I understand that.
Part of it.
But what about the ATF if there's vast quantities
That's the
of
thing. You see, what law is the ATF going to come in on?
well, what
When they
about
were
the
growing in the national parks, that's okay. Then they've got a reason to go in there and bust
Mhm.
it up. But this is on private land.
Yeah, I mean, technically, they can walk around with AK-47s because it's their fucking
Right.
land.
Right. I just don't know. I mean, wouldn't there be some federal law that they're violating that would go back to these places where they could execute a federal warrant as the AT? I mean,
It's really hard to catch them. They're really gaming the system. I'll tell you another thing they're doing. So when the police come in to raid them, so they all scatter.
yeah,
But
it's
the
the
problem
desert.
is, so the law, and this is where the bad policy comes in again. The law says you can't arrest anybody unless they're on the property at the time you come in and make the bust.
That's
All they
right.
got to do is drive down the road.
Wow.
They can't get arrested. So you
Yeah.
come in, you bust it up, and then they come back and they'll start over. I mean, it doesn't cost them very much money
Well,
to
yeah,
just start it back up again.
the one task force guy that I saw said, he's like, oh, it's basically it's great that we got this place and we confiscated maybe like $600,000 worth of weed on the street. But they
But
even said,
tomorrow it's gonna be back
no,
up.
but then they leave. And like you said, Tom, it's so cheap and easy to basically re-erect the same place and
Right.
do it again. And
I
you're
would
not gonna,
say actually that weed is probably, as far as overhead, got to be the best deal. I mean, if you're gonna go into illegal industry, it's cheaper than meth, cheaper. No, I mean, point being is
Using
that
slave labor. Yeah, it's great, Zeus.
what's
Mhm.
that?
It doesn't cost any money for
Yeah,
those
the
employees.
slave labor is the added bonus in that case.
That's where I get my whole greed thing
Free
about it. It's like
dogs,
you're
free
already
water.
doing something that we've been doing for thousands of years, which is, well, actually they're even advanced with that, but what is it, what do they call it when you like harvest the corn in one spot one year and then the
Like
wheat
rotating the
rotate?
crops.
Yeah,
Rotating.
they're doing crop rotation. I think I recall in one of the documentaries, I watched two of them, that they were saying that they get 4 grows a year out of this, and that the way they set up their greenhouses is so that it simulates different seasons, which is kind of
I'm
fascinating.
sure. I'm sure they have
Yeah, they do.
biologists and all kinds of
No, they
green
talked
thumb
about
people
it.
there.
They talked about it in the documentary I watched. They said they used the lights, the lamps, and they use shades over
Yeah.
to block out. So they create everything that you need to properly grow. I mean, it's
Wow.
like
And yeah, and they were getting it like it was like Home Depot, like what do you call it? Like, in-ground pools.
Yep.
Everything they got,
Yeah, above
they were
ground pool.
spending, to build one of these. They're probably spending like 15,000 on just what they needed for that. Then they have their slave labor build it. That's free. And within 3 months they're making $1
Yeah,
million
no.
off just one of those.
Yeah, no doubt. And actually what they said, Zeus, is they said they use those cheap above ground pools because all they're doing is they're chemically treating, they get so much water and they do all the chemicals and everything they need to do to make that work for the plants.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, the whole swimming pool thing, it kind of made me laugh because I remember this movie I saw when I was a kid. It was called Cheech and Chong Nice Dreams
Oh yeah.
with
I love
Stacy.
those movies.
Yeah, and there's this awesome scene where they have basically made something that from the sky looks like a swimming pool, but it's really just a blue tarp. And in the movie, the police helicopter are going over, but Cheech like tears a hole in it. So he climbs up on a ladder and he lays on his belly and he starts doing the swimming motion. It's totally. I think I could find the.
God damn, those movies were good.
Yeah, I'm gonna put. Like, I know we're talking about a serious thing, but I may post the link in the comments
Yeah.
section.
Oh yeah,
I'd like to
that's
see
a
that.
video at the end of the episode.
Yeah, totally.
God, I love them.
Go ahead, Tom. Get us back
I
on
was gonna
track.
say,
I'm
so
sorry.
one of the other thing, I got a couple more notes. I don't know. One of the other thing they're doing to kind of foil the police and law enforcement. So you wonder, like, why doesn't the National Guard come in? Like we said, they're not really breaking any laws to the point where the National Guard can come in and just swarm and arrest everybody, because it's only a misdemeanor what they're doing. So another way they do it to stop the search warrants, though, because they don't even want the little pestering, breakups of their property. So they'll take like the parcel of land and they'll divide it up into so many tiny little parcels, and they'll give like one to each member of the Hmong community.
Yeah.
So you got like 100, it's so many people like all on one tiny little bit, and they keep changing the owner. Every time somebody files for a search warrant, they'll change the owner of the land.
They're just
Then they got to
making
file for
chaotic.
another search warrant.
Yeah. In
Wow.
other words, they're taking advantage of all the good
They
things in
are.
our system as a
Yep.
country.
Yep.
It's sad.
Yeah,
It's
no, it's
really
and
sad.
also and I think Tom, you may have said this. I'm sorry. I mean, we're all kind of, excitedly talking about
Yeah.
this. But one of the promises obviously was, oh, the state, like Zeus has said, oh, all the money that the government's going to get and it's going to go to good things. Like that was promised to the Californians that, oh, all the taxes that we're going to make off weed is going to benefit your communities. And the one politician said, actually, no, it's all as far as the weed money that we know about, maybe 10 to 20% actually like gets taxed and goes to the state.
Wow.
So that's the big benefit
Yeah.
of taxing the weed. It's
Yeah,
like,
they were
yeah,
saying that it
no,
only takes that one person that's making like $1 million off of it to justify so many things. But the problem is that the little guy isn't probably making $1 million off of it in a year.
no,
They're
it'll
probably,
be Pfizer, Moderna. It'll be like the corporations.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the mom and pop down the street from Walmart. It's going to be Walmart.
and I
Once they
would
figure it
argue
out,
also that it's different maybe in California than it is elsewhere in the US. I mean, look at Virginia is now, you can literally have weed delivered to your house, which means there's a guy driving around the city
Mhm.
with bags and bags of weed to deliver to people. And he's not, no shade. He's like, all right, I can carry this because I am the delivery man for such and such dispensary. So I think that I think it'd be interesting to explore the laws elsewhere and see where California has fucked it up completely and where other places are maybe not having these problems.
Well, there are plenty of places that have legalized it, made it recreational. So that stuff's going on. You're right. As far as getting it by mail and all that, as long as you sign for it, you get it. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is like, or what I'm worried about, and what you would have to look at, to your point, is you'd have to like, let's say a state like New York, like, do they have the same kind of statute as California, where it's a $500 fine and a misdemeanor, even if you're growing an acre of it? Like, I don't know what New York has in place. California clearly is the model of how not to do it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's actually like being noted by the politicians in other states. And maybe they're doing the same stupid shit and it just hasn't
Zeus.
affected other places like it has California. I don't
Zeus,
know.
would you want to make growing marijuana legal, like make it a regular crop like corn and tobacco?
Like,
Why not just let people grow it?
here's how I would do it. Like, much like gardening in general, if you're making enough to sustain your needs, then fine, so we'll call that what, a pound.
There are people that do that. And it's not.
But if you want it to go corporate, you're going to need like a
You got-
whole farm.
Right. And that's where it begins, of course.
It's a
far
it's a
more
com-
squirrel.
But if
It's
you
a
make it
complicated
legal,
issue.
yeah, if you make that legal, then I
I
mean,
feel like the legalization to the United States, however they do it, as long as they can find some base laws that prevent these mass like grow farms, that
Yeah. You don't want it to be a criminal. You don't want it to be a criminal enterprise where there's no disincentive to, you know, to not do it the wrong way.
but if you make it legal and there's no punishment for growing like 10 acres of marijuana, then
I think we're
why
honestly
not do it illegally?
I think we're
illegally,
honestly at the
And
tail
you don't
end of
pay any
prohibition.
taxes.
I think realistically, if history repeats itself, which it often does, I think that we're at this weird place in the prohibition of it where 5 years down the road we might not be having this conversation. The Hmong, I mean, for what it's worth, the Hmong are trying to get into politics, so they're trying, maybe they're testing the waters to see where they can do something in the
Well,
middle that protect themselves from legal ramifications later.
they're obviously smart, and they see that being a politician or a member of the party is way more money making
Beneficial.
potential than selling illegal weed grows.
Right.
It'll
And
be
also,
interesting.
and not to focus on just the Hmongs, because we are the elephant in the room are the Mexican cartels that are bringing
Yeah.
these people
Actually,
and setting this up in California. I mean,
from the documentaries, it sounds like the Hmong are the ones that
In
are
Northern
really,
California.
No, they're a small percentage. They're the smaller percent. He just
it's
pointed
not-
them out because it was so
Okay.
odd that
Yeah, it's
they would be doing
Mexico.
this, and that they came all the way from Minnesota. And they still got all Minnesota
fucking
license plates on
Minnesota.
all the
God
cars.
damn.
It's just
I s-
crazy.
I still think this could
They're-
go back to a federal issue. If it can't be the ATF, what about the Department of Homeland Security? If there's human slave labor being perpetrated,
There's got to be a million other laws. they
But
could
it's a
get.
sanctuary
I
state.
mean,
It's a
If the
sanctuary
will was
state.
there.
So you can't. What are you doing? I mean,
Well,
what are
yeah,
you
but
going to
you
go in
can't-
and arrest people for?
well, you still can't have slave labor and sex trafficking, and that's going on too. I mean, there's got to be something. I just think they don't want to do anything.
Yeah,
Only if
it's
the people came forward and said, "Hey, they held me captive and forced me to work."
But that's still only going to be like one grow farm. That's going to be like one place.
But
That
the
one
thing
little
is-
parcel with the who
Right.
knows who the owner is.
And
Yeah.
then you're going to get there and they're all going to be identifying as the opposite sex they are. And then it's a whole nother thing that we
Look,
have to
the powers that be are always
What's
very
their
good.
indigenous sex though?
Yeah, what's their
That's what I
indigenous
want to
sex?
know.
Hey, you know, guys,
The-
you can back the fuck off. I was
Hey,
making
Among the Hmong. That's
Wait,
their,
Zeus, comedy is a big part of the podcast, so
I
you just
get
gotta,
that. I was
you just
joking.
you gotta deal with it. Yeah.
I don't have
Go ahead,
wrong
Mike.
with it.
I don't
No,
have-
I'm just
I don't
saying,
have feelings.
powers that be, they find a way to get things done very efficiently when they actually want to. Like, take for
Yeah.
example the person that leaked the Dobbs decision. Who is it? Who knows? What was
Mhm.
that? Year and a half ago? No, a year ago. Was it coming up on a year? Anyway, and then we had the kid, 21-year-old who leaked the defense paper. What was that he leaked? I can't even remember now.
Oh
Guy
yes,
out in Phoenix.
he leaked secrets about our efforts in the Ukraine for one thing.
Yeah, they had him in like 36 minutes. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
if they want to do it, I mean, and the thing is, the law, if they want to, they'll find a way. Like, I don't know, this stuff that's been discussed in Congress lately with the navigable waters situation. You guys heard about this with the EPA, the guidelines? Like, they have certain jurisdiction, a certain distance from navigable waters. I can't say it right now, but anyway. So what they've done is they've been working to change the definition of what navigable waters is. So if you have like a dry stream bed that only fills up like when you have a torrential rainstorm, like that's now navigable water. So it's like they're able to like control things that you can do on your property, like puddles. like anything, like any sort of water that's on the surface. What I'm saying is, not to talk about that, but the government has a way. If they want to, they will figure out a way to do it. And so I'm with Jack on this. I think it's a
yeah.
lack of will. It's not a lack of
Yeah.
means.
No,
lack of
totally.
will.
And you could boil it down, even look at the way that, like, you had people that were held indefinitely for trespassing. Like,
Yeah.
that's at the end of the day, after
Still.
all, was still, yeah, but some of the ones that were convicted, they got them on trespassing.
Yeah.
And then you have the investigation not happening, which now we know from the whistleblowers, of the Hunter Biden laptop and the Biden ties to corruption. This is obvious. Like, they don't, there is an agenda here, and I don't know where destroying California as a state fits into the agenda. Like, I don't know what that immediate benefit is, or maybe this is the way they want society to look.
Yeah.
Maybe that's maybe California is supposed to be
It's
what.
sad to say, but yeah, I think that's how they want the whole country to go until it all kind of falls apart, and then
Yeah, this is
they'll
just
look at it and say, okay,
maybe they want
capitalism doesn't work, so we need to put in communism.
more people smoking weed. I mean, that's definitely been an uptick.
Yeah, no, that's another thing. That's why that's another argument against just making it a free-for-all for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, how dumb do they want us to become? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, if you make something very, very, very easy to do, more people who maybe aren't happy with every aspect of their life, or maybe they're downright depressed, the malaise, oh, I got to go to work. Oh, I can't pay my, you know what I mean? I'm just going to choke up. It's the same thing with alcohol, you know? I don't know. I don't know.
No, it's definitely, I mean, there's definitely a market for it, right? Or I mean, when I saw the footage of all the aerial footage of the grow sheds and barns and tents, I mean, that is just crazy. The amount of land that's taken up. It's just out of control.
Yeah, and like Tom said, that some of the property is so large, even for an individual family. Like, the one guy said, "Oh, my buddy called me up and said, 'Hey, are you growing weed on your property?'" And like, the guy had no idea, and he found one of these places on his property.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I mean, so this is pretty, and the one woman said, yeah, she even said it looks like the X-Files, like Tom mentioned it. And I remember that episode too, where they find like the honey harvest.
All the bees,
Yeah, all the bees, yeah. And it looked like that, when they showed these cultivation or these greenhouses. I mean, it's unbelievable.
I guess the question is, what do you, I mean, round robin, what do you think the solution is? I think I've made clear what I think the solution is, but you guys disagree. How do you solve this? Because it's not going away. The Pandora's box has been opened. We're not going to suddenly outlaw weed. It's going in the direction of legalization. So how do you legalize it and maintain some structural integrity within the government?
I think you got to allow. I mean, I'll go first. I mean, one is enforcement, obviously, but two,
and tough laws.
But how do you enforce it? That's too broad. How do you enforce it?
Easy.
Well, by not making it a misdemeanor, making it a felony, and
actually,
what the penalties are.
And also funding the damn police,
funding the police properly. But I think the other thing is to allow counties. I mean, when I was watching those documentaries, allow counties to be dry counties legally, where it's not allowed. Just like in Kentucky. I mean, the heart of bourbon country.
Where we get all our bourbon.
I'm saying there's counties that you can't buy it, where it is a dry county. What I'm saying is, if you look at a state like California, which is really just enormous, it should be like 3 different states. You've got people making decisions in Sacramento for a whole state that is geographically, culturally, economically, vastly, tons of variety. I mean, you've got coastal, you've got mountains, you've got rural desert, you've got down, cities, you've got indigenous Minnesotans. You've got
Yeah, I think
people
you've got
from
every
all over the place. So you one rule, like one way of doing something, isn't gonna fit in a landmass that big. So I think if they allowed these northern rural counties to opt out of it, they probably would, because if I'm like running that county, I'm like, look, it's a net gain. If I can be a dry county, look at all the money I can save, on
fighting.
enforcing all this stuff, because I can have draconian consequences for it, and that would
Yeah,
stop it there.
Yeah, but
Or-
though, but Mike, I mean, the promise is all the money your county's going to have, and
Right.
we're gonna build better schools, and we're gonna have
They always-
more law enforcement, and we're gonna pay teachers more, and like all the bullshit.
Yeah.
People will vote for the guy that says, "Nah, we're not having a dry county. Look at all the money we can make if we don't." It's just like with alcohol. Like there's where I live, and then there's the town where Dana lives. And just one little rule difference. In the town where she lives, there are liquor stores, there are wine stores, okay? But they can't serve alcohol in the town. So what they'll do is they'll say, if you want to come have dinner in our restaurant, and you want to bring a bottle of wine, okay. And the dynamic that's changed when I look at both places is because we have so many bars in my city. Like the weekends alone, and not just the weekends, just the amount of just like arrests and fights in the streets and disorderly conduct and garbage on the streets at the next day. Like it's
driving, people dying, getting hit.
And not only that, the congestion that it creates because everybody wants to come here and party it up. Like just that slight tweak in the rules could make a world of difference. And when you're talking about and the driving factor of why this place is what it is money.
Mm-hmm.
It's more money for the city, and that's going to supposedly help all this stuff, which it doesn't.
How long do you think it is before we hear about, like, welcome to Indica High School, we're gonna beat the Septiva fucking Hornets next week? Like, it's gonna happen. I anticipate, another prediction, we are gonna have a high school named after a weed strain before we die.
Oh, I didn't know what those were.
Yeah, I didn't know where that was
I
going.
was like, what are you talking about?
I think Mike nailed it, is that there's still going to be the non-dry counties where they're like, let's make as much money off this as we can, and eventually somebody.
But and if they can manage it, and if they
they can't manage it now.
No, but my point, guys, was that those dry counties are going to dry up because there's so much promise of money in these places.
In the other places, yeah.
Yeah, not only that, even the people that live there are going to be like, well, I can make more money at my storefront, kind of like the people in Amity in the movie Jaws, where they don't want to shut down even though people are being eaten in the water.
Right.
Because of money. And I think the promises that dispensaries bring, just like taverns and bars, it's the same thing. At the end of the day, people they go for the short-term gain. They don't think about the long game.
Mike,
let
me just say about the counties first. So we let the counties decide on their own. The problem is, so they're coming in. Remember, they're moving in. It's like a county of like 2,000 people, and they come in with like 600 out of nowhere, and they all register to vote. They only need a few more. So you're going to let that county vote and decide what to do?
Yeah. Well, that's where
it doesn't take very many people to just overwhelm a small county, and then they can vote for whatever. Okay, let's make it legal. Let's make that legal. This legal. Everything's legal.
Did you guys see that documentary on Netflix called Wild Wild Country about the cult out in
I've seen
Oregon back in the 70s or 80s, I think it was, where the guy, it's this guy who's he's a cult leader in
cool.
he goes to Oregon and brings all of his followers, and they basically take over this town. Like they all register to
Oh
vote.
yeah,
They
yeah.
insert themselves as like mayor,
Mhm.
city council, school board, and then they go take over the county. Like they're just like the
Yeah.
police force. They have their they are the police
They
force.
didn't assimilate, did they?
Yeah,
They did not
I saw
assimilate.
one similar to that called Under the Banner of God or something with Andrew Garfield about the Latter-day Saints, Mormons, and them basically doing the same thing in another small town. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and
the
then
other thing, man. If none of this works, they go with religion. Our religion says that we smoke weed. We need this weed. There,
tolerance.
yeah, we gotta, like I said,
But-
I came up with my solution. I think
Well,
it's by far the easiest, but could have bad ramifications. But what do you think, Tom? What's your solution?
It could be disastrous. That's what I'm worried about. But yeah, you got to start with making illegal grows. If you're illegally growing too much, that needs to be a felony. That right there would just cut out the huge part of the problem. So everybody could still kind of grow little bits. Like you said, the gardening, you can still do that. And then you can sell whatever to the dispensaries and they pay taxes. Everything's legal.
Mm.
That's all you got to do. That's the first thing to do.
It's the
Yeah,
greatest they're gonna win.
I think another part of the problem is, again, these people have so much endless wealth, these cartels, that one of the things they talked about in the documentary is that homeowners, people with mortgages, they had no choice in a way. Like it was an offer they couldn't refuse. Like basically the cartels would pay them so much more than market value for the
Yeah,
shitholes.
They said like 20,000, 30,000 more than whatever they were asking, and they were like, "Fuck yeah,
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna move.
I gotta feed my family."
Yeah, so the people that that maybe wanted to live in the community, they can be bought too. I don't know what you do other than just totally like war on drugs, full fucking full steam ahead. And I don't think we're going back to that. I think
And-
Zeus is right. We're not going back to the water.
And really, in the grand scheme of things, weed is not like, when they call it a gateway drug, it's like so infuriating. If you want to talk about gateway drug, right here. I mean, alcohol is so much worse. Alcohol, you get drunk, you'll do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Weed, I've never seen a angry pot smoker, not when they were smoking it, at least. So call it a gateway drug, fine. I think that's pretty inaccurate. In the long run, if they were to legalize marijuana and get rid of alcohol, I think the world would probably be a little less dangerous, but that's just, my opinion.
Well, I'm glad we solved that.
Yeah, well, that's what we do here, Mike.
That's what we do.
We solve problems.
That was a good episode, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Hey,
nice.
thank you. Thanks a lot, Tom.
Yeah,
Well, wait a second. If we have been on for a while now, which is the vibe that I'm getting, are you telling me, Tom, that it's time to wrap things up?
Yes, it is.
All right.
Very nice.
Time to wrap things up. Hey, everybody, thanks for watching. We'll have another episode